Spider-Man has worn more costumes than almost any hero on screen, and every single one of them tells you something about where Peter Parker is in his life at that exact moment. Let's go through every suit from the very first homemade version to the newest one, and break down what makes each one matter. The human spider, before any red and blue suit existed, Sam Raimi's Peter Parker had to improvise. Right after gaining his powers, he enters a professional wrestling match chasing a $3,000 prize, hoping the money can help him buy a car, and finally impress Mary Jane. Since he isn't a hero yet, he throws together whatever he can find at home: a long-sleeved red shirt with a hand-painted spider, blue sweatpants, plain sneakers, and a red balaclava to hide his face. It's rough, but it already shows Peter instinctively understanding that his identity needs protecting. He even picks his own ring name, the Human Spider, though the announcer clearly thinks it's terrible and ignores it completely, introducing him instead as the Amazing Spider-Man for the crowd. His opponent, Bonesaw McGraw, is played by wrestling legend Randy Macho Man Savage, and after Peter wins in record time, the promoter cheats him out of the money anyway, paying him a fraction of what was promised by twisting the fine print. It's a small moment, but it's also the first time the film shows Peter getting burned by people in power, long before he ever puts on a real superhero costume.
He needs some milk!
The classic suit, after Uncle Ben's death, forces Peter to actually understand what with great power comes great responsibility means. The suit fans still consider the definitive Spider-Man look is born. It was designed by James Aitchison, a 3-time Oscar winner for his costume work on The Last Emperor, Dangerous Liaisons, and Restoration, and he said this suit was actually the hardest thing he ever built despite how simple it looks on screen. It stays remarkably faithful to the comics, but the film adds raised, three-dimensional webbing instead of a printed pattern, so it catches the light in every scene. The mirrored lenses hide Tobey Maguire's eyes completely, giving the character a more mysterious presence. This is the suit for almost the entire trilogy, though. Spider-Man 2 does tweak it, with a darker blue fabric, a more streamlined muscular silhouette, slightly smaller eye lenses, and a larger chest emblem. Maguire wasn't even diagnosed as claustrophobic until the crew put the finished suit on him for the first time, and production quietly built the schedule around keeping him out of the full mask whenever a scene didn't strictly require it, which makes the fact that it's still one of the most recognizable costumes in movie history even more impressive. The black suit Spider-Man 3 finally gives fans the transformation they'd been waiting for. A meteorite crash lands near Peter, releasing an alien organism that follows him home and bonds with his suit while he sleeps. Visually, it keeps the classic silhouette but turns glossy black with larger, more aggressive detailing on the emblem and uneven webbing. The real change isn't the costume, though, it's Peter. The symbiote boosts his strength and speed, but it also amplifies every dark impulse he has, turning him arrogant and increasingly cruel to the people around him. That shift is where some of the internet's most enduring Spider-Man memes were born. Jazz hands strut down the street included, and it's also what eventually pushes Peter to rip the symbiote off entirely once he realizes who he's becoming. It doesn't just disappear once he's rid of it either. The symbiote crawls off and bonds with photographer Eddie Brock, played by Topher Grace, transforming him into Venom for the film's final act, making this suit responsible for both Peter's darkest chapter and the introduction of one of his most dangerous comic book villains in the same movie. The vigilante suit. Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker starts somewhere very different. Director Mark Webb wanted this version of the character to feel angrier and more grounded than anything seen before, and it shows immediately. After Uncle Ben's murder, his only goal is finding the man responsible, not fighting crime. That obsession leads to a costume assembled almost entirely by accident, inspired by a Lucha Libre poster he spots in an old gym. He builds it from a red fabric mask, sunglasses, a black beanie, a dark jacket and jeans, hiding homemade web shooters up his sleeves. Garfield's actual expressions stay visible throughout every early fight scene, which keeps the focus on Peter's grief and anger rather than a polished hero performance. It became such a fan favorite for feeling genuinely achievable that it eventually showed up as an unlockable suit in the tie-in video games, letting players patrol the city in the scrappiest version of Spider-Man ever put on screen. The definitive suit. Once Peter decides he's ready to be Spider-Man on his own terms, this suit shows up, and it's still built around the idea that a teenager could realistically make it himself. His web shooters use Oscorp's biochemical research and mount directly onto his wrists. The fabric has a textured, almost basketball-like surface that stands out especially at night, and according to costume supervisor Linda Foote, that texture was achieved using rubberized ink layered over the fabric in a process the crew called foiling, which is also what gives the raised webbing its shine under studio lighting. The modified Oscorp lenses give him a sharper, more intimidating look than any previous suit. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 pushes the design even further, with larger lenses and more vibrant colors that lean closer to the comics, in what a lot of fans still consider the most visually striking Spider-Man suit ever put on screen. And it's the version Peter and Gwen Stacy are shown designing together before her death changes everything. The homemade suit before Tony Stark gets fully involved. Peter patrols Queens in a sleeveless red hoodie with a hand-painted spider symbol, a blue long-sleeve shirt, sweatpants, and red socks pulled over his sneakers, exactly exactly the kind of thing a real 15-year-old could actually put together. What's genuinely impressive is everything underneath it. Peter builds his own web shooters and mixes his own web fluid using supplies from his school's chemistry lab, and rigs up a pair of modified goggles to help control his senses. This suit becomes important again later in Homecoming, once Tony confiscates the high-tech version after Peter's mistakes nearly get people killed on a ferry, forcing him back into this homemade costume for the final fight against the Vulture, with none of the safety nets he'd gotten used to. The Stark suit. After Tony discovers Peter's identity, he recruits him to help during the Civil War airport fight. Spider-Man gets his first serious upgrade unveiled properly once Peter arrives back home in Queens to find it waiting in a suitcase. It keeps the classic red and blue look on the surface, but underneath is an enormous amount of tech, most notably Karen, an AI voiced by Jennifer Connelly and built to talk Peter through fights and suggest strategies in real time, marking the first time Spider-Man has ever had a voice constantly in his ear. Tony deliberately locks most of the suit's functions behind a training wheels protocol, believing Peter isn't mature enough yet to handle everything it can do, which frustrates Peter throughout most of Homecoming. Once Peter and Ned crack the system open, the full list is staggering. Dozens of web combinations, glide wings, an automatic parachute, a hidden reconnaissance drone tucked inside the emblem, and the infamous instant kill mode, which Peter immediately panics and shuts off the moment he hears it in Homecoming. It doesn't actually get used on screen until years later in Endgame, when Peter finally activates it against Thanos' army with none of that same hesitation. The stealth suit, also known as Night Monkey, during Far From Home. Peter gets pulled into a mission across Europe by Nick Fury, or rather Talos disguised as Fury while the real Fury is off-world. The problem is, nobody can know Spider-Man is connected to a kid on a school trip, so S.H.I.E.L.D. equips him with an all-black tactical suit built entirely around stealth, with manual eye lenses and none of Stark's usual tech. It's deliberately the most low-tech suit Peter wears in the entire MCU run, stripped down to just mobility and protection since Nick Fury has no patience for gadgets slowing his operation down. The best part isn't the suit itself, though. When Peter's classmates spot the mysterious black-clad hero in Prague, Ned panics and improvises on the spot, insisting this isn't Spider-Man at all, it's a European hero called Night Monkey. The excuse is so absurd it actually works, and even the in-universe media starts running with it, giving Betty Brant one more reason to publicly hunt down Spider-Man's real identity later in the film. The Iron Spider. At the end of Homecoming, Tony offers Peter a new suit and a spot on the Avengers, and Peter turns him down, though we get a brief look at what he passed on. It's a live-action version of a suit Tony Stark first gave Spider-Man in the comics, back in 2007, though the movie version's design and abilities are largely reimagined for the screen. That same suit resurfaces in Infinity War, when Peter starts running out of oxygen in space, and Tony activates it remotely without warning him first. Nanotechnology armor wraps around Peter's entire body, almost instantly, letting the suit repair itself and survive the vacuum of space. Its signature feature is 4 mechanical spider legs that extend from the back, useful for mobility, defense, and combat alike. Paired with Karen, it's what allows Peter to hold his own against Thanos' forces on Titan, alongside heroes far more powerful than him, and it's the last suit Tony ever gives him before sacrificing himself in Endgame. The upgraded homemade suit. After escaping Mysterio's illusions and realizing who the real villain was, Peter builds his own suit from scratch using a Stark Industries fabricator he finds stashed away, a moment that deliberately mirrors Tony building his own armor for the first time back in a cave in Iron Man. It's designed entirely by Peter's own instincts rather than any pre-programmed template, including new electrically charged webbing built specifically to disable Mysterio's illusion drones. Visually, it swaps the traditional blue for black accents, giving it a noticeably different tone from anything he's worn before. During the climactic fight in London, surrounded by Mysterio's fabricated illusions, Peter closes his eyes entirely and fights by relying only on his spider sense, arguably the moment that proves he's finally outgrown needing Tony's tech to win. The integrated suit, No Way Home, pushes Peter's tech further than ever. After curing Dr. Octopus, played once again by Alfred Molina, the Iron Spider nanotechnology that had been attached to Otto's mechanical tentacles returns to Peter and spreads across his existing red and black suit, fusing both into one. The most obvious change is a massive gold spider emblem stretched across the chest and back, giving the whole costume the look of advanced armor rather than fabric. It keeps the mechanical spider legs and gains extra durability from the nanotech, both of which matter a lot during the final battle at the Statue of Liberty against villains from other universes, fighting alongside Tobey Maguire's and Andrew Garfield's versions of the character for the first time on screen. It's also the last suit tied to Peter's old life, since it gets left behind entirely, once Doctor Strange's spell erases him from everyone's memory, closing out an entire era of Stark-built technology in one scene. The new suit. With no memory of him left in anyone's mind and no access to Stark tech, Peter goes back to basics completely. MJ, Ned, and even Doctor Strange move on with their lives having no idea he ever existed, and for the first time since joining the MCU, Peter is genuinely alone. He rents a small apartment, buys a sewing machine, and builds a costume with his own hands. this time in brighter, more classic red and blue that leans hard into the traditional comic book look rather than anything resembling Stark tech. There's no AI voice in his ear, no automatic parachute, no drone hidden in the emblem. For the first time since joining the MCU, Peter has nothing but his intelligence, his spider sense, and his own determination. No billionaire's tech cushioning him anymore, which sets up exactly the kind of hero he becomes going into his next chapter. The brand new day suit, the newest suit, leans even further into that classic identity, with vibrant red and blue replacing the high-tech aesthetic that defined most of Holland's run, and the raised webbing finally returning. The spider emblem grows noticeably larger, and Tom Holland has said the design was inspired by Peter's experience meeting the other two Spider-Men in No Way Home. Almost like a blend of all three live-action versions. Marvel also pulled back significantly on CGI this time, letting real stitching, folds, and imperfections show through, so it genuinely looks handmade. The web shooters are mounted on the outside for the first time in this run, oversized and impossible to miss, though they start to matter less as Peter's body begins producing organic webbing on its own. The biggest addition, though, is an AI named E.V.I.E, and unlike Karen or Edith, she isn't Stark technology at all. Peter builds her from scratch, and she monitors his vitals, extends his spider sense, and offers tactical support in a fight. Voiced by Naomi Watts, the same actress who played Holland's mother back in The Impossible. That's every suit from a hand-painted hoodie to a fully sentient AI. Let us know which one's your favorite in the comments. Like the video and subscribe for more.